Hi, it's Kevin Labates here, and I'm making this video as a follow-up to yesterday's because it seemed to cause some confusion, even though when I look at what I actually said in the video, I don't really understand why. But as a communicator, I have to take the responsibility for the failure to get across my point. So firstly, I'd like to start with a bit of history, which is that I've been using X509 digital certificates since 1998 when I was a security tester at Citrix Systems, and in my job there I actually ran an in-house test certificate authority, and back in those days the tools were a lot clunkier than they are now. So I do know what digital certificates actually do at the bits and bytes level. So secondly, I've been using Let's Encrypt for about 3 years now, and I think they offer an excellent service, namely the automatic issuance and verification of domain verified certificates, and I really appreciate the work that those guys have done. Thirdly, domain verified certificates are for ensuring privacy in the communication between a web browser and a web server. That's the sole aim. So the fact that there are phishing sites and scammers out there who are using Let's Encrypt to issue digital certificates for their sites, I don't see as a problem. The organization is called Let's Encrypt, and that's what they enable. They're not called Let's Identify, and if they were called that, then I would have a problem with what they're doing. So the bigger problem really is that people at large don't understand the difference between domain verified certificates and organization or extended verified certificates, and that's where I think the problem is. And I actually, thinking about it more deeply, I think there are a number of problems going on here. Namely, you have a technology that does something, and then people are trying to enhance it by bringing it into a sort of a further domain, and what's more, they are failing to identify what the real problem is and solve it. And the problem that you have with regard to using certificates in order to provide the identity of a website is, firstly, the effort required to perform that verification does not justify the returns that you get on it. And in fact, there's a commercial imperative for certificate authorities to put as little work as possible into their OV or EV certificate verification processes. So that's going to fail because 95% of sites out there are good, and they are having to pay very heavy fees to identify themselves and in order to exclude phishing sites. So it's not going to work. And what's more, the problem that it solves isn't the one that we want to solve. We want trust between a web browser and a website, not identification. One of the ways that you can build trust is by identifying absolutely the party that you're transacting with and knowing that you trust that party. So if I can identify that I am actually communicating with my bank and I trust my bank when it comes to financial transactions, then the system works. But for an awful lot of transactions that go on the web, it's not about the identity of the person you're transacting with, it's ensuring that the transaction is actually trustworthy. So for example, if I'm going to go and buy 1,000 RFID cards off a Chinese supplier, I honestly don't care who they are. What I care about is that if I pay them, I get my goods, and that is a different problem to identifying them. Now, if something goes wrong, then it is useful that I know exactly who they are so I can prosecute them in the courts, because if I have some kind of anonymous transaction and it goes wrong, I have absolutely no redress. So the question of identity and the question of trust are indeed connected, but they're not as tightly coupled as it might seem at first. So the final thing I wanted to go on again is the blockchain connection. So people have said, but how is blockchain going to fix this? And in fact, in the previous video, I didn't even mention blockchain, because at this moment in time, I'm not 100% convinced or even 50% convinced that blockchain is the answer. when it comes to blockchain, there's this initial thought of, hey, people are doing work on blockchain in order to verify identity. There's a lot of projects going on out there, and this may be an identity problem, or identity may be a part of the solution to the problem, so maybe blockchain can help. And secondly, there's that gut reaction of, well, aren't blockchains about building trust? And the issue there is, yes, blockchains are about building trust, but it's not the kind of trust that you may at first think, because there are lots of different kinds of trust. For example, I trust my wife when it comes to our family finances. I trust a coder friend of mine to write good code, and I trust my bank to either handle my finances properly, or if they make a mistake, to correct it, because of the fact that they are operating under a legal framework. And these are three very different kinds of trust. So when it comes to trust and blockchain, it's not always the kind of trust that you think it is. And actually, in blockchain, the trust that is built is what is probably best described as a trustless trust. When I send some cryptocurrency to somebody else, it's the reason why I trust that that is going to work is because the system is locked down with such tight protocols that the situation in which that would go wrong is an extreme one, a 51% attack, or something where I have failed because I haven't typed in a destination address correctly. It's not the kind of trust that you have with your best buddy, who you built a friendship up with over decades. It's an almost immediate trust, and it's the kind of trust that you have when it comes to dropping a stone. Right? I trust that if I drop a stone, it'll fall to the ground, because that's gravity for you. It doesn't mean that me and the stone, or me and gravity, have any kind of meaningful relationship. It's just something that over time I have observed about the universe, and it's got to the point where it's totally ingrained in me that things fall when you let go of them. So I've skipped over a whole number of topics there. I hope it gives you some idea of what I'm trying to achieve with the videos that I've posted on digital certificates over the last few weeks, and I'll probably be leaving this topic for a while and going on to something new soon, because I think I've kind of dug to the bottom of where I can get to for now. Anyway, thank you for listening, thank you for paying attention, thank you for commenting. I appreciate every single comment that I get, and I'll see you in my next video soon, I hope. Bye for now.